It all started on a Monday morning in Abuja, the kind of morning where the sky looked too clean, like it was hiding something. The courtroom was already full. The judge hadn't arrived, but nobody was talking. Even the air felt nervous. That's when she walked in. A girl, no more than 20. Her skin glowed like polished bronze, and she wore a long, flowing veil made of silk so white it looked like a secret. Her steps were soft, careful, almost like she didn't want the floor to know she was there. People turned to look. A lawyer dropped his pen. Someone whispered, "Is that her?" No one really knew her name. They just called her the girl in the veil. And they all knew one thing. She was not supposed to be alive. 3 months earlier, she had disappeared after being seen with Minister Balogun, one of the most powerful men in Nigeria. He was rich, ruthless, and known for destroying anyone who crossed him. Rumors said she had dirt on him. Something deadly. Something hidden inside the threads of silk she always wore. The minister's people claimed she ran away. Others said she drowned in the river behind his mansion. A few even believed she was buried in the red sands of the north. But now there she was, standing in front of them, breathing, watching. She didn't speak as she walked to the witness box, but her silence screamed louder than any voice. The judge, an old man with shaking hands, stared at her like she was a ghost. He looked down at his notes, then back up, blinked twice. "You are Miss Amina?" She nodded. "Just once. And you're here to testify?" Another nod. Still no words. But her eyes were doing all the talking, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. The courtroom leaned forward like a single body, holding its breath. The first lawyer, a smooth-talking man in a blue suit, stood up. He worked for Minister Balogun. His smile was fake. His confidence was not. "Miss Amina," he said, "we were told you were gone. Are you sure you're feeling well enough to speak?" Still, she said nothing. "Where have you been these past 3 months?" he asked louder now. "People thought you were dead." Amina slowly pulled back her veil. Gasps filled the room. Her left cheek had a scar. Long, deep, fresh. It looked like someone had tried to silence her with a knife. The judge banged his gavel. "Order. Order in court." Amina finally spoke. Her voice was soft but sharp, like a blade wrapped in cotton. "I was hiding," she said. Not from fear, but from power. The room went still again. She looked straight at the minister's lawyer. "Do you want to know what happened the night I went missing?" The lawyer didn't answer. She continued anyway. "I went to the minister's house with a silk dress I made myself. I was supposed to deliver it. That's all." She paused, eyes flicking to the judge. "But when I got there, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." "What did you see?" the judge asked. Her lips trembled. "I saw a man being beaten, tied to a chair. He was crying, begging. And Minister Balogun, he was laughing." The courtroom burst into noise. The judge hit his gavel hard. "Order." Amina's voice rose, still shaking. "I tried to leave, but they caught me. They locked me in a room. For 2 days. No food, no light, just voices behind the walls." "Why didn't you go to the police after you escaped?" the lawyer asked sharply. "I did," she said. "They told me to go home and forget what I saw." "Why didn't you?" "Because the silk remembers." Everyone froze. "What?" the judge asked. She reached into her bag and pulled out the white silk she wore that night. "I stitched a voice recorder inside the hem," she whispered. "It recorded everything. Every cry, every word, every laugh." The lawyer's face turned white. Minister Balogun, sitting in the back, stood up suddenly. "This is madness." 2 policemen blocked his path. Amina looked at him. Madness is thinking power can hide behind curtains forever. And then she played the recording. It was scratchy at first, but then came the sounds: shouting, hitting, laughter, crying. And finally, Minister Balogun's voice. "Make sure she never leaves this house." The courtroom exploded. Some cried. Others clapped. Many just sat frozen. Amina didn't smile. She just folded her silk and sat down quietly. Outside, the sun was rising higher over Abuja. But inside the courtroom, something darker had been dragged into the light. For years, people feared the minister. But now, they feared the girl in the veil, and her silence, because it spoke louder than justice ever had. The day after Amina's courtroom testimony, Abuja didn't feel the same. Every news channel replayed her voice. Every street corner whispered her name. Every government office stayed quiet. But deep inside the city's heart, where secrets wore shiny shoes and expensive perfume, one man was not staying quiet. David Ojo, a young journalist with big dreams and a shaky hand, stood in the hallway of his office, sweating. He had been following Minister Balogun's corruption for years. Bribery, disappearances, shady contracts. But Amina's story had flipped the game. Now the minister was dangerous and wounded, and men like that don't bleed quietly. David had a decision to make. Run like everyone else or dig deeper. He chose to dig. That night, David dressed like a cleaner and entered the government house with a fake ID card and real fear. His heart beat so loudly, he thought it might open doors before his key did. He knew where to go. Minister Balogun's private office. And behind that, his walk-in wardrobe. David had heard whispers for months about briefcases full of dollars, about documents never meant to be seen, about a tailored agbada with something stitched inside. He entered the wardrobe. Dozens of expensive outfits hung like dead men. Silk, velvet, gold embroidery. But David wasn't looking for style. He was looking for truth. He ran his fingers along the hems of the agbadas, checking for weight, for difference. And then, he found it. A dark green outfit. Heavy. Too heavy. He reached under the sleeve and felt it. A hidden pocket. Inside, a tiny chip, no bigger than a fingernail. He didn't know what it was, but his gut told him it was dangerous. He slipped it into his shoe, closed the wardrobe, and was about to leave, when he heard footsteps. Who's there? A flashlight beam hit the back wall. David crouched behind the coat rack, holding his breath. The door creaked open. A guard. Tall. Armed. Suspicious. David's mouth went dry. The guard stepped inside, looked around, paused near the agbadas, then turned and walked away. David didn't breathe until his lungs begged him. He returned to his apartment at 2 a.m. shaking like a leaf in Harmattan. He didn't sleep. He plugged the chip into his laptop and waited. A file opened. Just one. Silk. He clicked it. A video began to play. It showed Minister Balogun sitting in the same wardrobe, speaking into the camera. "If anything happens to me," he said calmly, "this is the story they'll never let out. It's all inside the silk. I paid them off. I buried the names. But if you're watching this, then the silk failed." Then came images, photos, contracts, people, judges, police, businessmen. Every person Amina had feared, they were all here. Signed, sealed, smiling. And one name was underlined in red. Justice Wale Adebayo, the same judge from Amina's trial. David leaned back in his chair. His hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear, from knowing. He now held the one thing powerful men feared more than prison: proof. But the moment he tried to upload it to his website, his screen went black. Then, access denied. Device tracked. His door slammed open. 3 men in black stormed in. He grabbed the chip, shoved it into his back pocket, and ran barefoot into the night. They chased him through alleys, over fences, through market stalls and gutters and dark corners where even rats held secrets. And then he vanished. By morning, David Ojo was missing. Some said he escaped to Ghana. Others said he was buried in the city's sewage system. But a week later, a flash drive appeared in a brown envelope on Amina's doorstep. No note, no sender, just a drive. When she plugged it in, there it was. The silk file. Still alive. Amina closed her laptop slowly. Her face was calm, but her eyes, they were on fire. She knew what she had to do next. And this time, the veil wasn't for hiding. It was for war. At first, Judge Wale Adebayo didn't want to believe what he saw. The names on the screen, the faces, the numbers, the blood. He sat alone in his mansion office, the lights off, only the cold glow of the laptop lighting his face. He had watched the Silk file 3 times, and each time it felt heavier. There was no escaping it. His signature was there. So was his voice. From 5 years ago, a meeting in Lagos.
A bribe.
A promise. He had thought it was buried. Now the truth was back, and it had Amina's eyes. Judge Adebayo closed the laptop slowly. His hands were trembling, not from guilt, from fear. He had seen what happened to people who got exposed. Not just ruined, erased. His phone buzzed. A message. No name. Just words. Deliver her silence, or we deliver yours. He stared at it, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Outside, Abuja was quiet. But the quiet never meant safety anymore. The next day, he stood in the courtroom again. The people clapped when Amina walked in. Her white veil was gone. This time she wore deep red, like the color of the truth that refused to hide. Judge Adebayo looked at her, then quickly looked away. He couldn't sleep the night before. He saw her in every dream, standing, watching, waiting. Now she was here, and in her hand was the flash drive. "This court is in session," he announced, voice dry, lips cracked. The minister's new lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we ask that the witness's new evidence be considered illegal. It was taken from private property." Amina didn't flinch. She stepped forward and said, "If truth is illegal, then maybe the law is the problem."
Gasps.
The judge banged his gavel. "Order." But his voice cracked like glass. Amina placed the flash drive on the table. "This is not just a file. It's a graveyard. And all the ghosts are ready to speak." Judge Adebayo stared at the small device like it might explode.
In a way, it would.
He took it, inserted it into the court's projector. The screen lit up. The courtroom grew dark. And then, voices, photos, documents, laughter, screams, and finally, his own voice. "The case will disappear. Just move the money before the weekend." The room froze. A reporter dropped his phone. A police officer removed his hat. The minister's lawyer sat down without a word. And the judge? He lowered his head. For the first time in his life, Judge Wale Adebayo cried. Not in front of cameras, not in front of the press, but in the shadows of his bench, where no one could see, except Amina. Later that day, the judge locked himself in his chambers. The door wouldn't open. He spoke to no one. He answered no calls. He stared into the mirror for hours, not at his face, but at the cracks in his reflection. Because the truth had done what bullets couldn't. It broke him. By nightfall, news had already spread. Judge Adebayo recuses himself from high-profile case. Mysterious evidence shakes Abuja court. The Silk girl returns, and she's not done yet. But Amina didn't celebrate. She sat alone on a bench under a neem tree outside the court. A soft wind blew. Her red dress fluttered, like a flag over battlefields. Her face was calm, but inside her heart,
war.
She knew this wasn't over. Balogun still had allies. The shadows were still deep. And the next chapter might cost her more than scars.
But the truth was out now.
And the truth has a way of finishing what it starts. The Silk always felt like protection.
Soft, clean, safe.
But now, it felt like a lie she had worn too long. Amina stood alone in her room, staring at the fabric that had once given her confidence. The same silk that had recorded crimes. The same silk that nearly cost her her life. And now, the life of her little brother. That morning, a package had been dropped at her doorstep, wrapped in plain brown paper. No name, no message. Inside, a photo. Her brother Yusuf, barely 10 years old, blindfolded, hands tied, sitting on a dusty floor. A man's shadow behind him, and the corner of a white agbada, Balogun's, visible just enough to make her blood freeze. There was a phone inside the box, too. It rang once she opened it. She picked up. A voice, low, slow, familiar. "You win in court, you lose at home." Then silence. She dropped the phone like it had burned her fingers. For a moment, she stood completely still. No breath, no tears, just heat, like something had broken inside her. Something final. That afternoon, the courtroom buzzed like a hive. Journalists, activists, angry youth in the back. Everyone came expecting to see a victory, but what they saw instead
Was Amina in black.
no silk, no veil, just black cotton.
Plain.
Unarmed, she walked to the front,
Calm.
straight-backed, eyes tired, but unshaken. The judge nodded to her. "You may proceed, Miss Amina." She looked at him, then at the crowd, and said clearly, "I withdraw my testimony."
Gasps.
Whispers. Someone shouted, "No." But she didn't move. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Amina, are you certain?" "I am." "May we ask why?" She paused, looked around, then said softly, "Because truth without protection is just a trap." Outside, the media exploded. Some called her a coward. Others called her brave. But most didn't know what to believe anymore. She returned home alone. Yusuf was waiting for her on the steps.
Dirty. Thin.
But alive. When he saw her, he ran into her arms. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "They said you were making noise that would kill us." She hugged him tighter. "You're not the one who should be sorry." That night, after Yusuf had eaten and fallen asleep, Amina sat in her sewing corner again. The white silk was still there, folded neatly, untouched. She reached for it, unfolded it, touched every corner. And then she saw it. A name, hand-stitched deep into the hem.
Zara.
Her mother's friend. The woman who vanished when Amina was just a child. A woman who used to say, "Some cloth is woven with truth, and truth doesn't fade." Amina's hands trembled as she held the silk to her face. It wasn't hers. Not really. It never had been. It belonged to every woman who'd tried to speak. Every girl who had vanished. Every mother who had swallowed her scream. She whispered, "You've always been more than fabric." And then, for the first time,
She didn't sew.
she burned it. On a patch of bare earth outside her house, Amina lit a match and dropped it on the silk. The flames rose fast, furious.
Free.
The wind blew ash into her hair. She didn't flinch. She watched it disappear, not as defeat, but as rebirth. When the last piece of silk turned to smoke, Amina stood. No more veils. No more threads. No more lies. The war wasn't over. But now, she would fight as herself. Not hidden, not haunted, and never again in silence.